So today is Palm Sunday. It's a day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem. And he chose to ride in on a donkey. He chose to ride in on a donkey because a donkey symbolizes peace. And he was greeted with palms laid in a path before him. And they waved palms in celebration because they figured that they had their new king, their new leader. And the palms represent victory. And yes, they did have their new king, but Jesus' concept of a kingdom was very different from the concept that the people of Jerusalem were picturing. You see, Jesus' concept of a kingdom was at the spiritual level. And so, really, Palm Sunday is about the victory of spirit over flesh. How wonderful is that? Do you realize what that means? It means we're playing with a stacked deck. It does. It means that that whatever you want to call it, this divine intelligence, this source of all things, God, whatever it is, created a universe that is for us, that supports us, that we can thrive in. When I was a kid, I used to love to go to Disneyland. Disneyland was our, that was our kind of our pilgrimage, right? And I can remember at about age 5, I had a thing about driving cars, and the Autopia car, that ride, was so real, right? I mean, you get in line and you get there and you could smell the fumes of gasoline, right? And you get in the car and the whole thing shook, the steering wheel shook. It was real, as real as could be to me. Now, the first time I went on that ride, I went on the ride with my sister, Nancy. Nancy's a little stiff, okay? She didn't like to break the rules, and I wasn't tall enough to actually steer it, so, I was kind of out of luck. However, then I was able to talk my older sister, Claudine, into it, and Claudine was reckless as heck. And she was 16 years old and much more interested in the boys sitting in front and back and seating us than she was about whether or not I was driving. And I remember getting a chance to steer it, right? And there I was, holding on to the wheel, and then I couldn't quite reach the pedal, so I couldn't really see what the heck I was doing. And so what happened was, I just started hitting the sides and edges. And you know what happened is it just kind of bounces you back into the lane, right? It's a good thing, because I probably would have ended up in with the submarines and the mermaids had I actually been able to steer the thing correctly, right? I think the universe operates a lot like that. And our ability to steer is really all about, and what I mean, and I don't want this metaphor to get to a point where I'm saying that I think that there's a direct road that we have that's already laid out for us. I don't really know if that's true or not, but what I am saying is, if you want your car to go, you want to try not to hit the side, right? And in order to get your car to go, it has to do with our connection with Spirit. And in order for us to connect with Spirit, we need to be able to trust. In order for us to trust Spirit, we must be able to trust ourselves. I do all these notes, and it's hard for me to remember where the heck I am because I don't necessarily go off of it. You see, this idea of staying in spirit versus the flesh is something I think we contend with all the time. We are constantly, at least I am constantly trying to remember myself. Remember the truth of who and what I am. In order to remember myself, it takes strong faith. in order to have strong faith, it requires that I trust Spirit. In order for me to be able to trust Spirit, I must trust myself. Now, I have a daughter. I have a couple daughters, and I have a son. But one of my daughters in December turned 15 and a half. Do you know what that means? Because 15, 6 months, and 1 second later, she wanted her permit to drive, okay? And I was, of course, the designated teacher of my daughter, instructing her to drive. So there is no wonder that my talk today is about trust, because I've been doing a lot of work in that area. But it's interesting teaching somebody something new, especially something that really, I mean, driving, it can be a serious situation. It's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But there's so many things that I kind of took for granted that I had to kind of back up. I remember the very first day we got into the car, and it's like, okay, we'll start the car. Well, it won't start, Dad. I said, oh, that's right. You got to put your foot on the brake, Okay. Okay. Now, and we go step by step. And so it's like this, what I call hyper instruction, okay? Every single step you have to go through and you have to explain it, right? And then after a little time goes by, you got to move out of hyper instruction, because it just, the eyes start rolling. Dad, I know that. I already know that. Okay? Did you know you just went through a red light? But there's always this give and take, right? There's constantly, as an instructor, you're always working with them and you're trying to get a feel for where they're at, and you're beginning to trust, and it's important that you trust what they know and that you show that trust in them. I think trust is kind of like, works according to the law of circulation in some sense, because the more I trust her, the more confident she becomes in her driving. And then the more trust I feel and confident in being with her as a passenger, But trust, this whole idea of trust came to me, and I've just been thinking about it, and this wonderful book came to me. It's called, believe it or not, Trust. And the book was written by, it's tough to say this gal's name, Iyanla Vanzant. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah.
Isn't she wonderful? Golly, I mean, she just tells it like it is. And in this book, she talks about mastering the 4 essential trusts. The first trust is self-trust, and then it's trust in God, and then it's trust in other people, and then it's trust in life. So today what I really wanted to share with you is about trust in self. I think I'll probably be giving another talk later, and I'll talk about other parts of the book, but I wanted to talk about trust in the self. Why is trust in self so important? I mean, if I just trust in God, isn't that good enough? What's the big deal? Well, there's this thing called free will, right? We're the ones that get to choose. We're the ones that pick. And if you are not coming from a place where you can trust yourself, it's really hard to have a connection with Spirit, a long-lasting and meaningful and powerful connection with Spirit, where Dr. Holmes talks about that how there's a power in the universe and we can use it. Trust in self is really important, and this book has really shown me a lot about that connection and how important self-trust is. And also water. I think that song. Thank you. Now, our experiences as kids can have a big impact on our ability to trust ourselves, right? When I was raised and when I was a kid, first let me say that I had there were 5 kids in our family. My mother passed away when I was young, and my dad remarried, and there were 2 other kids. So we had 7 kids in our family. That's a pretty good size. Nowadays, that's a good size. In that time, there were a lot of families that were that big. but it was still a lot. And I knew that if I did something wrong, I made a mistake, the message that I received from my parents was, you made a mistake. We can fix it, but you need to learn from your mistakes. And if I made a mistake and it was something they felt that I should have known, then I may have gotten punished for it or what have you. But I was still left with the impression that I was an okay guy, but I make mistakes sometimes. Now, I had a younger brother. My younger brother was hyperactive, well, was deemed, or and should I say, labeled hyperactive. And so the schools required that he be on Ritalin when he goes to classes and things. He was a handful. He was always moving around, always doing something, always into stuff. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, my stepmother and my younger brother did not hit it off. It was like, you know, oil and vinegar or oil and water or whatever. Didn't mix well. The message that I believe that he received was that there was something wrong with him. See, he received the message that he was broken, that he needed to be fixed, that there's a big difference between I did something wrong and, you know, we can make it better and it'll work out, and there's another whole different message of there's something wrong with me, my essence of who I am. Some people have that in their lives. Some of us have had that in different situations in our lives. And unfortunately, what that does is that feeds this thing that Yenla refers to as the negative ego. So we've all heard about the ego, right? And some of you may be familiar with the negative ego, but let me kind of give you a little bit of example of the difference between the two. So you have the ego. The ego says, I'm going to brush my teeth so my breath doesn't offend other people and I can show off my pearly whites. Right? The negative ego says, I'm going to brush my teeth so they don't fall out, and then I am completely shunned by society for the rest of my life. The negative ego feeds off of fear. The negative ego always takes the position of fear, and guess what? That negative ego, it has a great, incredible memory. Remembers every mistake you've ever made, and also remembers telling you not to do it in the first place. The negative ego loves to make comparisons. Loves to compare yourself to somebody else. You come home and, you know, you have 3 A's, 2 B's, and a C. It's a pretty good report card, right? But then, you know what? Yeah, but your sister, she had all A's. What's wrong with you? Negative ego is considered the lowest level of consciousness. Ugh. Ugh. Who wants any of that? Right? The lowest level of consciousness. Ugh. So, when we come to a point where we want to make a change in our life, what do you think the negative ego's response is to that?
Don't do that.
Don't want any part of it, right? Because any changes we make in our lives, especially if it's to start believing in ourselves, especially if it's to have a greater connection with a higher power, with spirit, means it's death. And so it's on survive mode all the time. And so for us, you're dealing with this whole idea of this negative ego, this voice within us. How do we deal with it? What do we do? Well, it takes a deep spiritual practice to deal with the negative ego. It takes all the things that we offer here at our center to deal with this negative ego. Meditation, prayer, a clearer and greater understanding of the truth of who we are. It takes going within. Do you mean I have to hear voices in order to deal with this negative ego? Yeah, you do. The right voice. You know, the voice that says, that is building instead of destructing. The voice that comes from a place of love. The voice that comes from that place within us that is pure and complete. That special voice within us. I know that you all know that voice. There's a story about a man who stumbles and falls off of a cliff and grabs a vine, right? And I know you've heard this, but this is appropriate for this. He grabs a vine and he's holding on and he looks down, he looks up and he says, God, please help me. What should I do? And God says, let go. And he thinks for a moment. And he says, is anybody else up there? We don't always want to hear what Spirit has to tell us, right? Because it gets scary. So important that we are able to trust ourselves so that we can trust God. We can't change the negative ego into a positive ego. It doesn't work that way. But what we can do is we can dissolve that negative ego. And again, as I said, we do that by what we do here at this center. And also, I might remind you of a class that's going to be taking place in a couple of days called Practical Mysticism. And you know what that's all about? Getting in tune with that mystic within you, because we all have a mystic within us, that pure place within us, to learn how to turn up the volume on that voice that speaks to us, that can guide us. Learning to trust more that voice of truth and of love. Learning to keep ourselves on track, on that track in the right lane, so we can express and be the greater person that we really are. Now, I wanted to read to you 21 things, although I'm not going to read all 21, I don't believe, that signs that you may not trust yourself. Okay? It's from the book. I accept the negative, self-rejecting messages that I received in childhood. I think that I could have done something to change or stop the childhood abuse, neglect, or abandonment that I experienced. Good breath. I do things to prove myself and value to others. I try to control everything around me so I can feel safe. I compare the choices I have made to those made by others. I don't know about you, but this is hitting some spots for me. I minimize or deny my own needs. It's sometimes difficult to recognize or tell the truth. I am unable to find or value my own voice. I am unable or unwilling to recognize or challenge my self-sabotaging or self-destructive thoughts, beliefs, and behavior patterns. I break the promises that I have made to myself. I find it difficult to finish what I start. I hold in anger, resentment, or ill will toward, or I speak negatively about those who I feel have hurt or harmed me. I deny or minimize my power of choice. I defer to others, allowing them to make choices and decisions for me. I think I've had enough of that. My other daughter, Macy, at age 8 years old, came to me and said that she wanted to audition for a play. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. You know, she had been in a couple of very small plays. She was very, very young, kind of, you know, well, sort of in the background and that sort of thing. And I have 3 children, and each one of my children are a little different, you know. And Macy has always been one that, well, let me put it this way. One of my children will run and dive and jump right in the middle of the pool. And then Macy is more of a want to feel the temperature first, okay? Which is good. And also make sure there's no, you know, rocks or cliffs or whatever. Wait, she's going to get hurt. She tends to be reserved, but at the same time, she's not shy at all. She just doesn't require a lot of our demand to be the center of attention. And so as we went in through this process, I said, okay, I'll take you down. And so we went in, and she had to have music prepared because she was going to sing. And I said, you mean you're going to sing in front of everybody by yourself? And I began to get nervous. To me, that's torture. I'll be okay. I'll be all right, Dad. No problem. I said, okay. So then I take her into the audition, and we sit. And in the meantime, kids are bouncing in, and they're kids that obviously have done this before, and they're real experienced, and they're excited, and all of these things. And Macy hadn't really been to this theater before, and she didn't know any of the kids. And so she sat right next to me, her head kind of burrowed into my shoulder. And I watched her as she was watching all the activity going on, all the kids. And so then they let us in, and she sat in the front. You know, they had everybody sit in the very front. And they asked, okay, who would like to go first to sing their song, you know, give the music? And she sat there like this. And in my mind, I'm thinking, uh-oh, is this going to be one of those things where they're going to have to pull her up out of her chair to get her up on stage? You know? My negative ego was at work, I think. And then her mom showed up. See, I had forgotten that her mom was going to be there, but she was coming in late. So as soon as she pops in, all of a sudden Macy's hand whips up. I'm ready to go. I'll go next. So she kind of walks, she takes her music, and she walks over to the pianist, and she gives the music to the pianist. And she kind of turns her back. And now I'm thinking, uh-oh. What's going to happen next? She's not going to be able to do it. And she whips around, and she sings. And the expressions on her face, it was like a different person, a person I had never seen before. It was beautiful. My face was like this. Only tears were coming down the side because I was so proud of her. And I know that there was a point of fear within her. I know that. But I also know that she chose that inner voice within her, that place within her that said, this is something that I want to do. This is my way of expressing who I am. And she faced her fears. And she moved forward. And what I'm here to tell you is, whenever we are willing to face our fears, we expand. We become more. We live in a universe that is for us. We just have to say, yep, I'm in. I'm in. Dr. Holmes writes, where'd you go? Uh-oh. Maybe you didn't write it. No? I don't think he wrote it. He didn't write it today. The gist of what he says is that when we trust, we are happy. When we are willing to trust, when we are willing to expand, and when we are willing to know the truth about ourselves, we are happy. And so what I'd like to do is, this time, just take us into prayer. Please join me. And so what I know is that spring is here right now. And it is budding all over the place. And it is the expression of the one, the divine, in all of its beauty and all of its glory. And I know that I am one with it. All of that activity, all of that beauty, all of that joy. It is good, it is God, and I am one with all of it. And I allow that to simply sink in. And I allow myself to know the truth of who and what I am, the divine creation of the divine. I am embodied with all of its attributes. It is always there to support me, to express through me, as me, and with me. And in this knowing, it is with ease and with grace that I let go. I let go of any thoughts or beliefs that are not real. In this moment, right here, right now, what I know is that that pureness that is within me expands, and it becomes the foundation for my life. What I know is that this idea of negative ego is a lie. It doesn't really exist. And so I allow the light of Spirit to shine upon it and dissolve it away, allowing me the freedom to be me. I know that all that I need in order to move forward, to expand my consciousness, to expand my awareness, is readily available to me through this center, through the people I am with, through the wisdom within. It is all good, it is all God, and it is happening right here, right now. Any thought or idea that in any way hinders or heeds my ability to keep my life on track dissolves right here, right now. I let go. I forgive. I realize that right here, right now is a new beginning, a new choice, a new possibility for me. I embrace this possibility. I embrace the unlimited possibilities for me and for my life. I let it go with gratitude for this day, for all the stuff that's happening, for the first day of spring, for International Happiness Day, for all the people that are here today, for all the love that is here today, for all the expression that is here today, for all the wisdom that is here today. I let go, and I know, and so it is.